Dear students, welcome to this lecture on carbohydrates. I'm Dr. Muzammil Maktoumi, Assistant Professor, Department of Biochemistry, Government College for Women, MA Road, Srinagar. In this topic, we will be learning about the definition of the carbohydrates. Students, remember that carbohydrates are also known as the saccharides. The word saccharide has been derived from a Greek word saccharon, which means sugar. Therefore, these carbohydrates are also known as the sugars. In simple terms, carbohydrates are sometimes known as the carbs. These carbohydrates, they are one of the important biomolecules. These carbohydrates are organic compounds which are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Besides, in certain carbohydrates, it has been seen that nitrogen and other elements are also present. Students, remember that the earlier definition about the carbohydrates was given and it described the carbohydrates as the hydrates of the carbon. The hydrogen and the oxygen in the carbohydrates were found to be present in the same ratio as is present in the water, that is 2 is to 1. For example, glucose, which is a common carbohydrate, has a molecular formula of C6H12O6, which means that in this molecule, the ratio between the hydrogen and the oxygen is 2 is to 1. So it's due to this fact that the compounds derived their name as carbohydrate. Students, remember that the definition presented in the previous slide is not a perfect definition because we have certain exceptions to that definition. The first one is the deoxyribose. Deoxyribose is a sugar which is present in the nucleic acid molecules as a part of the nucleotide. This deoxyribose, it's a known sugar. However, as per the definition I just described in the previous slide, does not fit in this molecule because this molecule has a molecular formula of C5H10O4. So the ratio of the hydrogen and the oxygen in deoxyribose is not same as that is present in the water, that is 2 is to 1. So as per the definition, this deoxyribose molecule should not be classified as a carbohydrate. This is the first exception. The second exception include the molecules like acetic acid and lactic acid. Both these molecules have the ratio of the hydrogen to oxygen as 2 is to 1. So accordingly, these two molecules should be classified as the carbohydrates. However, in reality, they are not the carbohydrates. So this definition defining carbohydrates as the hydrates of the carbon is not a correct definition. There is a need, therefore, to develop a perfect definition for the carbohydrates. Students, remember that we have certain terms like polyhydroxyl groups. Polyhydroxyl means that a molecule possessing more than the one hydroxyl group. Similarly, there's a term in chemistry used that's functional group. Functional groups are the specific groups of atoms or the bonds which are a part of a hydrocarbon chain and they are responsible for giving a specific chemical behavior to that molecule. So we need to remember two important things about the carbohydrates. One are the polyhydroxyl groups, second one are the functional groups. For carbohydrates, remember students that there are two types of the functional groups present in the carbohydrates. One is the aldehyde group and the second one is the keto group. Now students, if you look at these two structures of the two molecules, you will see some similarity in them. The similarity is that both these molecules contain more than the one hydroxyl group, or therefore we can describe them as polyhydroxy molecules. Now, if we look at these two same molecules very closely, a bit closer, we'll see that these two molecules have some similarity as well as some differences. The similarity is that both these molecules contain the hydroxyl group more than the one, and the difference is that they have different carbonyl group. Though both of them possess a carbonyl group, but that carbonyl group is different in these two different molecules. The molecule 1 has a carbonyl group that is aldehyde, while as the molecule number 2 has a carbonyl group and that is keto group. So carbohydrates are polyhydroxy alcohols with carbonyl group which may either be an aldehyde or a keto group. Okay, so far the definition of the carbohydrates that we have arrived at is the molecules possessing polyhydroxy alcohols with either an aldehyde group or a keto group attached with them. Students, now look at this big molecule. Can we see any active or free carbonyl group in this molecule? Apparently it doesn't have any. But if we do the hydrolysis of this molecule, and after the hydrolysis what we will get is a molecule like this. We'll get two molecules, and one molecule will contain a carbonyl group, that's aldehyde, shown on the left side, and the other one will contain a carbonyl group, that is the keto group. So what we have seen is that many polyhydroxy alcohols may not have an active aldehyde or an active keto group, but they may yield those active aldehyde or an active keto group on the hydrolysis. So those molecules which apparently do not have a active carbonyl group, but if on hydrolysis they produce an active aldehyde or a keto group, so those molecules will also be classified or designated as the carbohydrates. Therefore, the complete definition of the carbohydrates can be presented as: carbohydrates are the polyhydroxy alcohol with potentially active carbonyl groups which may either be an aldehyde group or a keto group. They also contain those compounds which yield these molecules on hydrolysis. Thank you, students. I hope you have understood the actual definition of the carbohydrate.